I've been hurt by church. What do I do now? A friend of mine loves Jesus and he enjoys being part of church. And then one day someone from the church said something really mean to him that was nasty and it was really uncalled for. He was left scratching his head thinking, what just happened and why? Sadly, this is not unusual, and if you've spent any time around church, you no doubt will have been hurt at some stage as well. And this is a personal and a sensitive matter that is usually best worked through with someone you respect and trust. But here's a few thoughts that are meant to help with this process and answer this question. First, this is not unique to church. People hurt people. Hang around with any group of people for a while, and someone will hurt or offend you at some point. It is inevitable. And that's because other people are people, just like you and just like me. We are imperfect. And Christians are those who freely admit this and who meet with God and each other at the foot of the cross, where there are no innocent parties. That's why a central Christian practice is taking communion together, the Lord's Supper, sharing Christ's body and blood as a reminder that we are fallen, broken, and in need of forgiveness ourselves, and ourselves need to be made whole. But I understand the conviction that we should be able to expect more of church. And so second, we expect more of church people because they are people aspiring to become more like Jesus. But here's the truth. All people are in process. People in your church, like you and I, are in process. There's always a gap between Christ-like perfection that we all seek to be like and where we're at in the moment. And a mark of personal maturity is that this gap between aspiration and attainment will decrease over time. Check out Philippians 3 verse 16. A mark of communal maturity is freely confessing our failings to one another, being quick to apologize and to extend grace to one another while also confronting un-Christ-like behavior. Third, it's important to be biblical in our expectations, and this is a big one. When you become part of a church family, what are you expecting? And are those expectations realistic? Are they biblical? Letting the Bible shape our expectations of God's people is a sobering reality check. Check this out. In the Old Testament, God's people are named Israel from the family of Jacob, who was renamed Israel. Look at how Jacob's sons behave. Most of them want to sell their brother Joseph into slavery because they were jealous of him. Some wanted to actually kill Joseph completely. And it's like, man, talk about dysfunctional, but God works it out in the end. But it is hardly a story of happy families. And in the New Testament, to be blunt, not much changes. The disciples are competing with each other for who is the greatest. They regularly squabble with each other like children. And I'm not trying to denigrate them, but that's what you see in the Gospels. In the church in Corinth, used their spiritual gifts to boast that one's better than another. They were having sex with people they shouldn't be having sex with. They didn't care about the poor. They got roaring drunk at communion. It was a mess. The scholar David Bosch puts it this way. Throughout most of the church's history, its empirical state has been deplorable. This was already true of Jesus' first circle of disciples, and it has not really changed since. Whew. As you let the Bible shape your expectations of God's people, fourthly, you must exchange the ideal for the real. Let go of what the ideal church should be like and realize it's made up of flawed people just like you and just like me. Dietrich Bonhoeffer says, only that fellowship which faces such disillusionment with all its unhappy and ugly aspects begins to be what it should be in God's sight. Treasure in jars of clay, people in process, and so can start to change the world. The Son of God becoming human shows God acts not in an ideal ethereal plane, but on an earthly historical plane, in and amongst life's impurities and imperfections, in the real. Fifth, Jesus shows that God confronts, challenges, and corrects sinful behavior. Going around hurting people is not okay. And God also chooses to work in and with and through flawed and fallen people. And he invites us to do the same. Now, because God deeply loves the church so deeply, this sinful behavior hurts God. If you want to learn a bit more about this, read the Old Testament book of Hosea. And so sixth, in being hurt by church, God is right there with us. And in the cross, he has made provision for forgiveness. And in the Holy Spirit, God has provided power for our transformation. Of these different thoughts, which of these is helpful for you? And do you think it would be helpful for you to process some of the hurt that you're reflecting on by talking with God or talking with someone close to you that you trust? Or maybe you want to reflect on the ways that maybe you have hurt other people. The good news is people who are the church are not what they used to be, for God has already started to transform them, and they are in the process of becoming a sanctified and glorious church, a pure and spotless bride that Jesus is returning for, and we get to be a part of that.